those like hand blenders, those hand wizard things that you get for, so my venerable one eventually gave up the ghost the other day, and so I bought a new one, and I just wasn't paying enough attention. So I've accidentally bought one with a spiralizer attachment. So I'm on trend for 2008. Hi, I'm Jock.
Hey, I'm Ray.
You're listening to The Pig Wrestlers, a podcast where Ray and I are reviewing this book, Never Wrestle With A Pig by Mark McCormack. So here's a question for you. So we've talked about, special purpose acquisition companies before. The kind of things that, the kind of things that typically allow companies like electric vehicle companies to get listed publicly much more quickly. But my question is, rather than the reverse merger side of things, how do you create these blank check companies in the first place? How does one create a SPAC and get it listed when it's not even clear what you're investing in?
The cult of personality, right? So if you are a money manager, whether you're a VC or a private equity manager or a fund manager, Woodford was a great example. By all intents and purposes, you giving money to Woodford, you're basically writing him a blank check. And so SPAC is the same thing.
Yeah.
Where you pay the person raising the money a fee for going out and finding the best investment to use that money with. And the reason it's caught on so much is if you are the shareholders of a private company that's growing really well, you're served quite well by private money, especially if you're in the US. So there's no reason to go public. And if you do want to go public, you've got to go and do a roadshow and raise the money and persuade people, whereas you don't have to do that with a SPAC. You have one conversation with one person who's already raised the money. They're getting paid for it, so it is a bit more expensive.
Sure.
Or maybe a lot more expensive in some cases.
Yeah.
But you as an operator, as an executive, don't need to go and roadshow for 6 months.
Sure. So I get the benefits to the company wanting to be listed by reverse merging into a SPAC. But what I don't understand is, how does something with only a kind of a generic stated aim of investing in a particular sector or a particular technology get listed themselves to be in that position to begin with?
Okay, so when you ever hear about VCs investing in startups, what do they always say? Why did they invest? It's because of the team, right? It's the same thing. You believe this person is going to make you money, so you give them money so that they can go and invest it. That's it.
Okay.
So Chamath has been like, or the SPAC prince or whatever they call him. And he, I think he's done quite a good job with it as well. And he's gone and bought Virgin Galactic and Open Door and Oscar Health and which other one was quite big recently? But anyway, he's done like 7 or 6.
Right.
And so people believe in him and want to invest alongside him.
Right.
So you and me sitting at home, say we actually had some serious dough.
Yeah.
We would be courted by all sorts of investment banks and financial advisors and whatever, giving us ideas of what to do with our money. And every so often, someone's going to come and say, well, this really famous person, they're raising a SPAC. They're going to invest in something really cool. Would you like to be part of it? Like, oh, they bought Virgin Galactic. Oh, I'd like to be associated with something like that. Oh, they bought Open Door. Wow. Well, I would have loved a piece of Open Door early. So, maybe this guy knows what he's doing. Yeah.
But in terms of the actual IPO, then the only barrier seems to be having sufficient funding to become publicly listed. Then it just seems to be purely just a money boundary then.
My favorite SPAC of all time is WPP.
Okay.
And Martin Sorrell took this company that was doing something else, wire plastics. And it was basically a dead company, right? But it was listed. So they took it over and started amalgamating all of the media companies into it.
Right.
And he built incredible conglomerate, and it's still called WPP. They didn't even change the name. That you get a public listed company, money, and shareholders, and you use that to go and buy something. I mean, Warren Buffett and Geico. You know, what is Berkshire Hathaway if not just basically a big SPAC? Like a massive, massive SPAC run by the cult or funded by the cult of Warren Buffett. And actually, it's really interesting. I try and catch a little bit of their annual conference each year. And each year there's a big commentary about, yes, we all talk about Warren Buffett, but actually Charlie Munger is a big part of this story. Like for many things, he's the brains behind the returns. And you see it in their relationship and how they are with each other. It's incredible. Like they look like an old married couple. It's amazing. It's so funny. I finally bought some crypto. Like considering like a lot of my friends were buying crypto 8 years ago when it was like less than $100, and I should have and I didn't, because I didn't understand it. I finally bought some crypto last week. I bought some Ether, some Bitcoin, and some Doge.
Yep.
Ether and Bitcoin have done nothing.
Yeah.
Doge is up 60%.
Yeah.
In a week. Incredible.
There was a guy called Chris Ellis who I think I met not long after.
Chris Ellis.
You know Chris? Yeah, because I was going to say, I met him around about the same time as you, so I can't remember whether you introduced me or vice versa. Or, anyway, but he was like into really early crypto around 2012, 2011-ish.
But like Chris was a believer. Before any of us even understood the smallest amount of it, Chris was a fundamental believer in the counterculture of crypto, right? How it was freeing from these centralized structures that were oppressing us. Like a real believer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was the kind of thing where he was so ahead of the curve that talking to him about it, you know, there was just fundamental concepts that I just wasn't grasping. I just, you know, he could explain it, and I was just going, still don't get it. You're making perfect sense. I just cannot wrap my head around these alien concepts because I just don't have any frame of reference for them yet. And I'll be honest with you, with NFTs, digital representations of original digital artifacts, is still a concept that is like, okay, so basically what you're buying is a hash of...
No, come on, that's a bit facetious.
No, I know, I'm oversimplifying, but it feels a little bit like I don't understand that, well, I do understand that anything can have a value if it is ascribed a value. And I get that, currency is just simply another version of that. But what I don't understand is why there is seen as so much inherent value in, say, the Charlie bit my finger video meme, which, the dad has sold as an NFT to fund his kids going through college.
Okay. So the best description I've had is you can buy a print of the Mona Lisa. But if you had the original, you'd feel differently about it.
I do get that. It is still just oil on canvas. The individual constituents of the thing are no more special than a forgery of it. However, the fact it is the original, as you say, imbues it with something special. Now, that's fine. But when you translate that to digital representations of the original, does it hold the same meaning? Or is it that I'm just simply not open-minded enough to grasp the fact that physical and digital are interchangeable these days?
Value is in the grasp of the owner. Right?
Beauty is an idol upholder, values in the grasp of the owner.
We feel such a keen sense of ownership. That's my tree neighbor. Why are you chopping its branches off? Well, it's infringing on my land or whatever, right? We feel such a keen sense of ownership as a species. And it's ingrained in our genetics. It's so deep. And that's why NFTs are taking off. It's like, that's the original. It's ingrained in the blockchain that's the original.
Now, I think in terms of asserting a creator's rights over a piece of intellectual property, so I originated this picture, or I originated this digital artifact with this video. I am the legitimate creator of that. I think there's tremendous value in simplifying any copyright claims and things like that once you have some kind of verifiable and traceable ownership for digital items. That aspect is, the very practical, mundane aspect of it. So part of the reason why I'm finding it difficult is, even with a physical item, if one were to replicate an item, down to the atomic level, so every single nuance and aspect of it is identical to the original, like making a digital copy of something, the bits and bytes are identical, okay? The makeup of the thing is essentially the same. Is it the same because it's not the original when we know it's a copy?
Describing something, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the something paradox or whatever.
The ship of Theseus.
Yeah, that's it. The ship of Theseus.
Because we both watched WandaVision and...
That's it. So the theory is that, if you have the original ship and you reconstitute some of the parts or all the parts, is it still the same thing?
Ship. Yeah.
Doesn't matter, right? And that's it, right? It doesn't matter because it's how you feel about it. And that's the important thing about all of these podcasts we're doing in this book. It's about how people feel. That's the truth of the matter. So, it was difficult for me leading Unmortgage in that I knew I was in the right, but it didn't matter whatsoever because people felt differently. And even 2 years later, I thought I'd be vindicated because they wouldn't have made any progress. But it doesn't matter because people don't feel that way. They still feel that they did the right thing pushing me out. And that's the truth of it. Sort of beginning and end. And I think we just don't get enough education about this, is perception is reality. And that's what NFTs are. It's someone's perception that this thing has value. This being the original thing, or one of a limited edition, is super cool, and therefore I want one. Pokemon cards, right? We've got replicas of original Charizard Pokemon card. If you have the real one, that's something else. Now, what's the real one? It's just printing on card, just printed at a different time. Why is that worth more? Because people ascribe value to it. Same with these NFTs.
I am falling into the trap of thinking just because I think in a particular way doesn't necessarily mean that everyone else thinks in that way. So I am saying I cannot see why there is inherent value ascribed to something, to a digital thing. And just because I think that way clearly is not reflected in the way that other people think.
George Soros is famous for his quote that if he sees a bull market, he buys and stokes the flames. Because everybody else is already believing, so he's going to run it up with them.
Yep.
Whereas if you're trying to bet against what people perceive, what, people are flocking towards, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're going to be wrong.
So part of me wants to kind of assert the independence from, groupthink or, going with the herd. And I appreciate that it is in human nature to do what everyone else is doing. There's the experiments they've run where there's 5 actors in the room and 5 actual test subjects in the room. And the 5 actors know that when a certain thing happens, they still wordlessly stand up. And the chances are the other 5 people who aren't in on it at all will also stand up because it is human nature to go with the crowd, to follow the established social norm. And I get that. But at the same time, it's I want to at least fool myself into thinking that there's an element of rationality in my decision making. And just because everyone else is running towards something doesn't necessarily mean that I should be as well. And so I'll at least wait a bit to evaluate whether or not it's the thing I do. But then again, all that does is put me in the category of either late majority or early majority market. In other words, I need to see the early adopters get burned or not, and then make my decision as to whether it is something I want to get involved in or not.
Too late.
Well, too late to make the potential major gains. But, if you're happy to kind of get the the 7 or 8 or 6, 7 or 8 on the scale of risk, and that's kind of your investment profile, then you're bang on. You won't make the massive gains, but you won't lose out either if you just see what the hell's going on first.
Yeah.
Fools rush in where angels fear to tread.
The fools are the ones that actually came out with the massive upside.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's all a question of timing.
The thing that you don't talk about is the many fools that, fell by the wayside.
Yeah. The survivorship bias. Was it eToro that's the trading platform where essentially you place money and just say whatever that other person invests in, my money will do exactly the same thing? I mean, that's almost like your micro SPAC.
Totally. But, it's appealing to our nature to be a social species, right? Which is why trying to be an individual is very, very hard.
Yeah. I mean, we had Tim on the other week, right? And he was talking about cargo cults, the fallacy of thinking that if you go through the motions, the correct motions, then you will see the same result as happened without realizing that the motions you're going through have absolutely no bearing on that result. The result is caused by something else entirely. So say, I follow you on eToro and I say, I think you are a good investor. You seem to be getting good success. But of course, you're not telling me about all of the lost bets. But of course, you're only going to shout about the ones that basically subsidized all of your losses elsewhere in your portfolio. You're not going to give me the full picture. There's just an element of caution. If you want to duplicate or replicate or follow the crowd, at least have a consideration of whether you're seeing the entire picture, whether you're going in with full information or whether you're going in with partial information. And I certainly don't do that myself all the time because, we all make impulsive, irrational decisions.
Yeah, it's just not a world I understand. Unlike you, I'm an observer rather than a participant in those sorts of things.
You would jump in earlier on something than I would.
Just put some money into crypto, right?
Okay, that aside, the point is you have been starting businesses.
Yeah, but I have a choice, Jock. I tried to get a job.
You chose to take more control over your destiny. You could have done any number of other things. You could have compromised and taken a job you didn't particularly want.
I didn't know any better. I should have just kept my mouth shut and done as I was told, and I would have had a job.
It wouldn't have fulfilled you. You clearly wouldn't be sitting here smiling at me and reflecting upon the journey you've had so far. But at the same time, you clearly had the disposition to go, it. I'm going to take that risk. I'm going to make that leap. Maybe a leap of faith, maybe an informed leap of faith. I don't know. But the point being is you had that impetus just to go, you know what, let's try it. What's the worst that could happen? And I know for a fact that I wouldn't have taken that leap as quickly. I'd have waited that bit longer. But that's the reason why, you have several businesses under your belt and I'm chugging away gently but steadily on the same thing. I can't say I've had explosive growth or success and I can't say I've been a complete failure either. It is just middle of the road. It's a 6, 7, 8 on the risk scale.
You still are taking a risk, right? You're not PAYE employed.
Yeah, it is riskier than having a predictable salary. And the compromise I make is sometimes I get paid, sometimes I don't.
You're taking a serious risk with your time on this podcast, right? Knowing that this sort of content doesn't pay off for a while.
It may not pay off at all. And that's no reflection on either of us. It's just there's an element of luck. There's an element of whether what we are talking about happens to connect with the audience we're getting there. But all we can do is try and talk about things that interest us, that hopefully are of interest to other people, and maybe provide some kind of insight into things that maybe other people don't have direct experience of.
So the thing that I always tell people that come up to me and say, look, they're going to do their own thing, is what I wish I'd been told is when you want to scratch your own itch, just realize you will bleed. And nobody told me that, right? Nobody said, it's hard. It takes much longer than you think it's going to take if you get there at all. You've got to enjoy the journey rather than always be focused on a potential end goal. Because if you don't enjoy the journey, you're probably not going to get to that end goal.
Sure.
People are the most important thing. It's going to be the thing that you need to learn the most about the fastest if you're not going to make constant mistakes. And mistakes that you often don't know you're making until you have a moment to realize and reflect.
Yes. I was introduced to the concept, or reintroduced to the concept, of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you heard of this one?
No.
So this is the effect where if you're not great at something, you also don't have the knowledge to realize you're not great at something. Yeah? And so consequently, you tend to overestimate your ability. Because you know enough to see some success, but you don't know enough to know of all of the potential pitfalls that you just luckily have avoided so far.
Really blissful ignorance.
Yeah, a little bit. I was talking to someone about situational leadership, so different approaches to coaching people, and the people go through these 4 stages of, complete ignorance, where you have no idea how to do something. So somebody has to explain how to do it to you in a very directive way. And then that second stage where you start to get a little bit of experience, a little bit of knowledge, and you become overconfident. It's like kind of, look, mum, no hands, on the bike, where, they've just got going and then they don't realize how unstable they are on the bike. And, they will fall off and hurt themselves, and then confidence is shattered. And the coaching thing is to kind of help them dust themselves off, pick themselves up and get back on the bike again, And it's that kind of idea of that, almost that, early success equals overconfidence. And knowing that that's a phase you have to get through, and the inevitable trough of despair that comes afterwards when you suddenly realize, this is really hard and I've hurt my knees, because I've fallen off the bike. Getting through that phase to a point where actually, no, I'm getting better at this. I can actually control the bike more reliably. I can stay on without falling off. And now it's about how to get better and faster and more maneuverable rather than worrying about actually staying on the thing. It's that peak of overconfidence combined with inability and experience that then leads to the biggest drop. And we've all been there. But yeah, it's funny, kind of the lessons you would tell yourself or someone else if they were starting out down the same path. On the one hand, sure, there's avoid all these obvious traps and, try not to make the same mistakes I did. But at the same time, you are more of an experienced person because of the mistakes you made and what you learned from them.
Sure. Also poorer, Jock.
You're richer in knowledge.
Not so sure. Yeah, looking forward to next week. Stan has gone through a lot of these learnings, right? He's had a tough journey last 5 years. Stan Karpenko is the founder of Give Vision, and he's invented this most incredible of things. So if you have lost your sight or are losing your sight, he's created a device that allows you to see again. And it actually works. And it's just incredible. And so there's these incredible videos online where you see people who cannot see, put the device on, and it just renders everyone to tears. And so he's about to install them into Chelsea Football Stadium, into Stamford Bridge. They want to be the first football club in the world that allow their lifelong fans who've lost their sight to be able to see their team again. When those veterans walk out onto the pitch to lay the wreaths for Remembrance Day, they'll announce it on Match of the Day and stuff. And it's just going to be one of those moments that's just going to give you shivers. Yeah, it reminds me, gotta make sure he gets a documentary producer to follow them when they're going through this journey. It's important. Now, this is an actual technological advancement that's going to make a fundamental difference to people's lives. And something like football will broadcast that message far and wide.
I'm looking forward to speaking to Stan. That's gonna be a really interesting conversation.
Cool. See you next week.
You take care.
Bye.
Bye. You're listening to the Pig Wrestlers podcast. We're meant to be reviewing the book Never Wrestle With A Pig by Mark McCormack, but we don't always get around to it.